Well, good morning, Mayor and Council. Looking forward to the opportunity this morning to share with you a brief update on where we're at in terms of getting ready for streetcar operations, which is really just about 14 months away. So as we start the presentation this morning, probably take a look first here at a system overview. There we go. Just a quick reminder on the system overview. As you can see, our system is actually going to be comprised of two routes. The D line, which is the larger route you see on the screen here, serving Midtown, the business district, and Bricktown. A secondary route that is called the B line, and that actually serves Bricktown along with the Chesapeake Arena, the new park, the convention center, and the Myriad Gardens. You can see there that the D line is just under 5 miles of revenue service, offering 10 to 12-minute frequencies during peak, 14-minute frequency off-peak, and comprised of 22 stops. The B line, on the other hand, is just over 2 miles. We're looking at 15 to 16-minute frequency and 9 stops on the B line. Continuing with the system overview. Wanted to share this image with you here on the right. Again, it's a image of the route, but here you can easily determine which parts of the route are going to be off wire and which parts of the route will be on wire. And again, that is something that makes our modern streetcar system unique, in that we are relying on battery propulsion technology really to provide service along about 40% of the route. So that green area is the off-route area, off-wire area, and the red area is the on-wire area. Again, looking at our service span, the D line will operate Monday through Thursday, 6 a.m. to 12 a.m., Friday, 6 a.m. to 2 a.m., and then Saturday, 7 a.m. to 2 a.m. The B line, we're looking at having the same service span as the D line, only as we start the system, we'll have regular service on Friday and Saturday, and then we'll run the B line when we have events and conventions occurring. You'll notice that the only Sunday service that we'll provide will be again, where we have events and conventions, and so when we launch the system, that's the extent to the Sunday service that we have planned. Okay, so looking at operations preparedness, as you can imagine, 14 months away from streetcar operations, EMBARK staff, Herzog, our contractor, their staff, we're very busy getting ready for all the things that go into preparing the Oklahoma City streetcar for operations. As you can see here, we're looking at about a 14-month timeline with several major objectives to accomplish over that period. And through the presentation, I'll go into each one of these in a little bit more detail, but as you can see, first up is moving into the storage and maintenance facility and equipping that facility as it is completed, working our way down through the list in terms of finally being ready for the FTA Readiness review. So, storage and maintenance facility. We're looking to move in January of 2018 following the completion of the building in December. And I wanted to give council a sense of really what is going to occur in this building. We talk a lot about it being the storage and maintenance facility for the vehicles, and this is true. This is where they'll be stored. This is where we're going to work on the vehicles and maintain them, but this is really going to be the operation center for all of Oklahoma City Streetcar. This is where all of the staff will report for duty. We have training facilities located within this building so that we can train people that need access to our right-of-way. We can train employees. And this is the location of the control center. So supervisors that are on duty will be able to monitor the status of the system from visual displays. They'll be able to identify the location of the vehicles, the status of the traction power substations and the electrification system. All that from within the control center. So as far as major tasks go, as we begin moving in January, we'll not only be setting up the administrative offices and making sure all of our technology is working, but we'll begin ordering parts and special equipment and inventorying those appropriately. A few pictures for you here of the storage and maintenance facility. The very top picture was taken just about a week ago, so you can see it's just almost ready for move-in. Looking at the bottom left, this is a image of the track that's actually in the yard. You'll notice it's ballasted track rather than embedded track that we've seen in the city streets. The middle bottom picture is an image of the one of the maintenance bays, and then you can see the front of the facility as well. So vehicle delivery and testing, and again, as Mr. Couch had mentioned, we do have some flexibility in delivery, which is a good thing for our operation. So once the storage and maintenance facility is complete and we have begun standing up that particular building, then we'll be in a position where we can receive delivery of the vehicles and have a place to store them. So again, we're looking at taking delivery of vehicles probably somewhere in the January to March timeframe. And just to give you an idea of the type of inspections and testing that will be done, first of all, before the vehicle even leaves the factory, it will go through a first article inspection, and that is where the factory production manager and then the MAPS 3 consultant that has been on site since the vehicles began production, they will go through basically a checklist, if you will, of different items, making sure that the vehicles were built according to specifications. Once they arrive in Oklahoma City, Brookville representatives will be on site. Between Brookville and eventually Herzog, our operator, will do static testing. So that's testing the vehicles to make sure, for one thing, that they're still in the condition when they arrived here that they were when they left the factory. But basically all the tests you would do without the vehicle actually moving. So it could be simply opening the doors, making sure the control switches and some of the circuits, all those things work. And then the dynamic testing will actually be where we'll test the vehicle in motion out on the test track that was described earlier on Hudson. So we're looking forward to receiving the vehicles. A couple of comments on the images here. This is vehicle number 1. As it's on the test track there in Brookville, Pennsylvania. You can see a shot of the interior of the operator cab as it begins its test run, and then an exterior photo on the bottom right. And I will mention that the vehicle does not have the lower skirting, so when it arrives and we put it into service, it'll have a much cleaner, modern look. But in that particular photo, and the next one I'll show you, they have the skirting off, so you can actually see the trucks, if you will, that are under the vehicle. And so again, here's a larger image of our first vehicle, the red bud color, of course. And then in the bottom right, you can see a photo of EMBARK staff, our state safety oversight officer, as well as Brookville's production manager, standing next to what I believe is car number 6. You can see it's just in framing compared to the almost completed vehicle number 1 on the top part of the screen. And so I will mention it was a very productive trip. We mentioned inspection and testing. So several of us from EMBARK, MAPS 3 office, again, our state safety oversight office, and Herzog, our contractor, we did take a recent trip to Brookville, Pennsylvania to inspect the vehicles while they are on the production line. And again, we timed it just right so that all of the first 6 vehicles were in production, so we were able to look at vehicle number 1, which is pretty much complete, all the way down to vehicle number 6, which is, again, just getting framed, and then, as you can imagine, everything in between. So it was very, very enlightening, very informative. Okay, I won't spend a lot of time talking about construction. That's, of course, being managed by the MAPS 3 office, but again, it is a critical part of being ready for operations, and that is monitoring the construction schedule and participating in the construction meetings. This image here will just give you an idea of kind of where we're at on some of the main pieces of construction. You can see with the table on the left that we have about 73% of the utilities clear. Track demo is at 50%, track installation at 44%, and then the OCS foundations, or the foundations for the overhead catenary poles is about 44%. So again, color-coded so you can kind of see what parts are occurring on the route. And then talking just briefly about staffing. Obviously, for a successful streetcar operation, we have to have adequate, well-trained staff in place. To give you a sense of what we're doing on our staffing, as far as EMBARK staff goes, we have had a streetcar operations manager on staff for a little over a year now. We've had a lot of support from our safety officer, our public information office, our administrative support staff, helping the project move along. And eventually, as we get closer to revenue service, we plan on adding a customer service representative to our staff as well to extend our call hours some, but also to be able to address what we will anticipate is some additional volume at our call center. And so I mention that because one of the things that we think is very important from a customer service perspective is that customers using the Oklahoma City streetcar, you know, it shouldn't matter whether it's EMBARK or it's Herzog, it's all Oklahoma City streetcar. And so, again, when customers have questions about the service, they'll call the EMBARK call center. The uniforms, for example, will even be approved by EMBARK. They'll have the Oklahoma City streetcar logo as well as the EMBARK logo and such. So again, from a customer experience, although we have kind of two different groups responsible for the operations, the idea is to make it seamless and unified for the customer. So looking over at Herzog staff, most of the staff responsible for operations will be contracted. Currently, we have a general manager on site. He's working full-time now. Throughout the rest of the winter, Herzog will be adding a general manager, safety manager, operations manager, and fleet manager, with those positions coming on at different times throughout the project. The fleet manager obviously would be coming on within the next couple of months in anticipation of the storage and maintenance facility being online. And then as we get about 6 to 8 months away from operations, that is when the operators, mechanics, and the rest of the frontline supervisors will be hired. And community outreach. Wanted to talk a little bit about community outreach. When we look around at other systems, and I think as we're talking about operations and all these tasks that we've identified, you know, we've learned a lot from visiting other operations. Staff from EMBARK and even in the MAPS office to some extent. I mean, we've went to Kansas City and had tours and ridden their system. Same thing with Atlanta. We've been down to and toured the Dallas system a couple of different times. We've rode the DC streetcar, Portland streetcar. So we've tried to really, you know, build our plan on listening to advice from those systems. And one of the things we've learned is community outreach is very important. And you know, the MAPS office through ADG, I think, you know, we would all agree have done just a fantastic job of community outreach with the business owners and the property owners along the existing route. And so as the operator, we want to be able to continue that and emulate that moving forward. And so as you'll recall, we had a lot of community involvement with our branding, and we used that same approach or a similar model in community outreach, working with different stakeholders to name the streetcar stop. So if you haven't had an opportunity to look at the names of the streetcar stops, they're on the slide here. You'll see there's 22 different stops ranging from the Myriad Gardens all the way down to the Scissortail Park stop. And we purposefully named these so that they're descriptive generally of the area the stop is located, but they're not so specific that we couldn't hopefully be able to garner some sponsorships in the future. Also looking at community outreach, social media, of course, is very important in getting our message out to our community. We try to post some material at least once a week as we have different events and things occurring. That frequency picks up, but we try to do at least once a week. Currently have a couple thousand followers on Twitter, over 400 on Instagram, and 588 on Facebook, and we can continue to see that grow, and really would expect probably as we get closer to operations to see it grow much faster than it is currently. One of the other things we've done with community outreach is we've certainly reached out to the ADA community. And what I wanted to mention here is, as you'll recall, I might have shared this with council one other time, but prior to construction, we went out and we actually kind of mocked up and painted a streetcar stop platform along the route. That helped us as the operator just kind of get a feel for where the shelter would be laid out, where we might want to put the ticket vending machine. But it also helped us as an education piece. So this is the stop we mocked up at 8th and Broadway, and we invited the Mayor's Committee on Disability Concerns to come out and join us at that platform, just so that we could help educate that group and, of course, receive their feedback. We had about 8 to 12 folks from that committee show up and join us, and we will conclude that education piece with a similar tour of the first platform as it's completed, which will most likely be the ballpark stop platform. And again, the idea there is to get that committee's input on the best way to communicate how to use the streetcar to the ADA community. And so one of the other things we've been working on recently in terms of community outreach is our renderings. And I have 3 renderings I wanted to share with you this morning. You've probably seen at least 2 of them. But the idea with the renderings, again, is not necessarily just to show what does a streetcar stop look like. It's really to begin helping our community understand how is the streetcar system going to work? What can they expect? And so you can see from this rendering alone, it's very easy to determine that, okay, the streetcar is sharing the roadway with a motorist. You can see the type of shelter that you would expect to see at a streetcar stop, very similar to what we're currently installing at our bus stop locations. You can see the streetcar is ADA accessible. There's an individual with a mobility device. Bicycles are allowed on the streetcar. You can see the person waiting with a bike. Also, you'll get a sense of the pylons or the markers for the stop locations. So you can see it's clearly labeled here as the ballpark stop. And what we plan to do with those platforms is one side of the platform will have basically a static map that will not change of the route, and the other side of the platform will be an electronic display that through phasing we will eventually start with notification of when the next streetcar will arrive, and then we will work our way up to adding an interactive map and hopefully even leveraging that for advertising and public service announcements. Okay, the next rendering I wanted to share with you, and you've probably seen this one, but this is a unique stop in the system. This is the Scissortail Park stop right at the corner of Robinson and what will be the new Oklahoma City Boulevard. You can see in the background a rendering of the convention center along with Scissortail Park and a proposed convention center hotel. And then just out of sight, of course, is the Chesapeake Arena. And so what makes this stop unique in the system is that it is double tracked. You'll notice streetcars can serve the stop platform from both sides. And then also, just as a reminder, this particular part of the route, as the streetcar moves from Robinson over to Hudson, it will be in a dedicated right-of-way on the north side of the boulevard there. And then the last rendering I wanted to share with you this morning is one that we have not had an opportunity to unveil to the community yet, but we thought this was a pretty good opportunity to share it with council first, and then I'm sure it will be tweeted out just probably moments later. But this is an image of the stop in the Central Business District. So this is the streetcar coming south on Robinson, just north of Park Avenue there. So a lot of the same amenities we looked at with the Bricktown stop, but this gives you an idea of what the service looks like in the day. Obviously, the one we looked at the ballpark stop was an image of the streetcar service at night. Okay, talk a little bit about operating revenue plan. Generating revenue from the system is certainly one of our priorities. We want to be able to offset the costs with streetcar fares. And so what we've been working on over the last 12 months is basically a fare study for our entire transit system. So that's evaluating our fares for bus, for river cruises, paratransit, and of course, streetcar. As part of that fare study, obviously we're focusing on streetcar and trying to determine an appropriate fare. That study is still underway, but we do know at a minimum that as far as fare options go, we will have at least a single trip or time-limited fare. We'll have a day pass for the streetcar, and then we'll have an unlimited monthly pass for the streetcar. Again, those are what we plan on having just as minimum offerings. Now, transferability between modes is just absolutely important to us. We want people to use the streetcar and the bus system. And so we also plan on offering universal passes that will work between modes. So again, it's about giving the customer choices. If I'm just a bus rider, I can buy just a bus pass. If I'm just going to use a streetcar, I can buy just a streetcar pass. But if I want to use both, we have the universal option. So,
Jason, do other cities do annual passes? I mean, you stopped at monthly, but are we looking at an option where you can buy a year-long pass, or is that too?
You know, I'm not sure on the annual passes. It wouldn't surprise me if there are some out there. We haven't got that far. The three that I mentioned, we know are kind of essential. And then as far as the annual pass goes, we'll just have to determine what kind of interest and how hard it would be to administer a third type of fare media.
Thank you.
Yep. So also as part of the fare study, we just finished up 4 different focus groups on October 30th. And again, this was bringing people from the community in to learn about the streetcar and to learn from them their thoughts on appropriate fares and fare collection technology. Now, we had England Public Relations help us with that. They're currently kind of compiling some of those results. We don't have those yet, but I was encouraged by the participation. We had over 35 different people participate. We had interest actually from about 200 people. We had folks in those focus groups that just rode the bus system. We had folks in those focus groups that never used transit. They parked in our downtown garages. We had some members of the cycling community there, so we felt like we had a pretty good mix within those focus groups. And then lastly, in terms of collecting fare, we are looking at ticket vending machines. You probably noticed that in some of the renderings, but each one of the platforms will have a ticket vending machine so that passes can be purchased while an individual is waiting for the streetcar. The other piece of the fare study is not only looking at what an appropriate fare would be, but what's the best way to collect that fare. And so in addition to what we currently offer, we are in the process of putting together an RFP for mobile ticketing technology, which would obviously allow users of the system to purchase their fares from their smartphone, not have to interact with the ticket vending machines or purchase tickets at the transit center. And then finally, last thing we're looking at in terms of operating revenue is naming rights and sponsorships. The COTPA Board of Trustees last Friday awarded a contract to Hoke Advertising for naming rights and sponsorships. And so as we've seen other systems across the country be able to secure naming rights deals, is something that we are certainly looking to doing, and are confident that the contract awarded last Friday will help us get there. Okay, and finishing up with FTA Readiness Review. One of the core values of our organization is safety. In fact, the core value is safe always. And through the FTA Readiness Review, we feel like we're able to certainly ensure the safest operation to the Oklahoma City community. So what the FTA Readiness Review is comprised of is basically the FTA through ODOT Transit, State Safety Oversight Office. they will certify our system for operation. As you can imagine, those FTA requirements are, essentially best practices that are applied to other rail systems throughout the country. So it's something we certainly want to comply with as well. Now, ODOT's role in terms of providing oversight for the safety operations is relatively new. This was not legislation when the streetcar was originally developed and such, but it is part of the legislation that was signed into law in 2012. Final rule came out in April of 2016. And so we will be working and have already been working very closely with ODOT. As I mentioned, they accompanied us on our trip to Brookville to look at the vehicles. So one might ask, well, if our streetcar is not federally funded, why would we have this oversight role? And the answer is really, first of all, the streetcar connects to a federally funded system, our bus system, right? It also makes a connection at a transportation hub with federal funding. Obviously, as I mentioned, with safety being one of our core values, we as an operator want to demonstrate that we're adhering to safety programs that are being used with other systems. And then the other thing is looking forward. If we want to expand the system and apply for federal monies for expansion or even receive additional formula funds for maintenance of the streetcar, we need to be able to demonstrate that we are complying with FTA safety rules and regulations. And so we have been very busy preparing, getting ready for the readiness review. We do expect the readiness review by the FTA to occur in May or June of the coming year. While the FTA is here, they'll of course look at the alignment, they'll look at the storage and maintenance facility, they'll inspect the vehicles, but they're also going to look at a lot of our safety plans. They're going to look at our certifiable elements. Again, this is kind of our checklist of things that we're looking at to make sure we have a safe and functioning system. They're going to be looking at the activity that our committees have had. We currently have a fire and life safety committee that's meeting regularly. That's where we involve police and fire and help educate them about the streetcar and so that they're prepared for emergency response. Safety and security committee, our configuration management committee, which is basically operations, having a review of different changes that might be made through the construction process. So there's a lot of stuff that the FTA is going to look at when they're here. In addition, and just finishing up on FTA readiness review, several of the EMBARK staff have been completing the transit safety and security program certification. There's 4 different classes. They're 4 to 5 days in length. 2 of us have completed 3 of the 4, and then 1 other staff member is beginning his certification this year. And so we will have all those required certifications in place by revenue operations. Okay, so with that, that's an overview of what we have been working on, kind of behind the scenes, getting ready for operations, and we expect there'll be more to add as we get closer. And I'll be glad to take any questions.
All right, questions for Jason?
A couple of questions.
Sir.
I have a bike, and I want to ride on the bus or on the streetcar. Where does the bike physically? Where is it located?
Yeah, so in the mid section of the car, there's actually a location where there's no seating and a bike rack. So.
And then second, you talked about stop layouts and planning for that. It can get awfully cold and wet and windy in January. What are we doing to protect people from the elements with the stops?
Well, there is a shelter, and I can back up to that. Or do you mind pulling that shelter up? So there is a shelter at each one of the stop platforms, and then you can see it here with the individuals kind of setting under the shelter. The shelters, again, they do conform to our current standard, which is 3 sides. And also keeping in mind the frequency on the streetcar, being 10 to 12 minutes during peak, 14 off peak. Hopefully the wait won't be too long.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Jason, thank you and your staff for such great work.
Thank you.
All right.